welcome in. If you guys are new here, my name is Dr. Matt, and I have been showing people how to completely make the MCAT their best asset for I don't know, 13 years. So if you have questions, drop a question here. We will go ahead and immediately jump into a quick chat about, I wanted to go ahead and talk with you guys about the cars section, because I think that the cars section is really, unfortunately, let's be serious, the cars section is one of the most unpopular sections on the MCAT. It's the section where you're tested on reading comprehension, and you're given these very, very wordy narrative blips that talk about all kinds of topics, from philosophy to history to music to everything else you can possibly imagine. Just everything that you could possibly imagine as a topic is on this section. It's a section where you can't prepare for the content because there's no way you could know what random thing they're going to talk about. They might be talking about a guy who died in ancient Greece hundreds of years ago, but this section can be aced. I was a math major in college, and I still made 100th percentile on the section. And one of the things that you have to be able to do, though, is you have to be able to read really fast. So my tip of the day for this section, aside from all of the complicated, here's how to critically reason and understand stuff, is to simply remind you that you need to be able to read around 300 words per minute through a really dense commentary on random topics from across the spectrum of philosophy, history, everything in between. So if you are not used to reading longer material, start doing it and do it every day until you can read about 300 words per minute. And this is the very first thing you need to knock down before you can ace this section of the MCAT. All right, guys. So when you have questions, let me leave a little comment here. Drop your MCAT and Premed questions here. Do not forget to drop those questions here. So one of the things that I'm considering doing is we're figuring out if there's going to be a time this summer that we do a formal MCAT class. So you guys got to kind of give me some feedback on that. And if you think that is something you'd be interested in, let me know. Why don't we get this over? Let me do a quick closed caption on that clip there and get that running. Welcome in, guys. For those of you who are new to the MCAT, if you are in your first year, that is the other thing I meant to mention, is new MCAT tip sheets for free are now available on MCATboss.com. So if you have a, let me leave that here as well. New tip sheets here for the MCAT are available for free on MCATboss.com. I don't think so. Just inquire with your email address and ask for them. I'm trying to put in, I'm going to go ahead and put in one more update to the website and make sure that everybody can see there's a special second form that you'll be able to fill out to get those, so that everybody has access to those. Just some basic quick guides for the people who are, interested in getting their timeline correct, getting their long-term plan right. If you're going to do the MCAT and you're going to do it during your undergrad, there's a pretty specific timeline to do it on that I think more people need to be aware of. So doing my part to make sure everybody is kind of aware of that. All right. And then let me go ahead and get this one over to here. When you guys are thinking of applying to med school, you're going to see a number of different, welcome in guys. You're going to see a number of different, like MCAT ranges, right? Sometimes you'll see an MCAT average, and sometimes you're going to see a, let's say, there's kind of like a mid 50 mark on medical schools on how many students they let in, what score range they let students in. And I think that the majority of people have an idea that they need to score in the range of the average, rather than thinking that they need to be in the window of the mid 50. And unfortunately, as much as it would be totally awesome for everybody to have kind of the average admissible MCAT score for every particular school that you are applying to, I think everybody should at minimum feel safe applying to a school if you're in the bandwidth of the mid 50, right? And so if a school, let's say you have a 507 on the MCAT, if a school tells you that their average incoming class has a 511 on the MCAT, but that the mid 50 is from like 506 to 516 or something of that nature, I think it is really important to realize that that is a significant number of people. If you are talking about a class with potentially like 1 to 200 people, that is a very, very not, that is not something to make light of, right? Like that's a big deal. If you can get those apps in to schools for which you still fall inside the mid 50s, then I think that you're doing good if you can get those. All right. Next one. Let me see. Welcome in, guys. Awesome. If you have access, while we're on the topic of the MCAT cars, if you have access to, your essentially your favorite LLM, you can decide when you want to use this. But some students are trying to generate reading content for themselves inside of an LLM in order to get their speed up with the cars section. And the danger with the way that the LLMs tend to write the cars practice material is that all too often the cars practice passages that they make are they tend to be very LLM like. And what I mean by that is simply that they tend to be biased towards doing like average sentence length and really clear narrative exposition, because they're trying to follow sort of like guidelines for best practices for writing, like as if you're going to turn in a passage for the MCAT as if it's like a written paper. And of course that is not the point, right? Like that is not the point. The point is to get used to reading in the sort of advanced editorial fashion that the MCAT tests you on the cars section. And so if you have ever read them, you know that the majority of the passages are going to be in we'll say an advanced reader level in a way that doesn't exactly look like LLM text, right? Like it might be a passage about Napoleon, it might be a passage about ancient religions in the Far East, and it might be about the moral philosophy of group of vegetarians. Like, it's a whole bunch of different things. And one of the ways that you can kind of try to replicate that is when you're prompting an LLM, if you do decide to use that route to practice your reading for the MCAT, prompt it to mimic true human writing, including what we call burstiness. And what we mean by that is that the variation in sentence length tends to follow a burst pattern where it goes very short sentences and very long sentences, very short sentences and very long sentences. And this is just a normal way that a lot of humans write. And unfortunately, it's a way that a lot of the LLMs forget to write. So try it out if you have not. Yeah, and if you have and you've been disappointed by the results, try to do it with a little bit of prompting to be a little bit more human-like, so that the writing follows patterns that actual writers on the MCAT would follow. But you do have to be a little bit specific when you're doing it, so that they actually mimic it. So, all right, real quick here, let's go ahead and we will pull up the practice one we did before. I think a couple people have seen this, so let's do this real quick. So what we'll do is we will start with some of the practice questions. All right, Monica has a question. Says, do you think, do this in 1 second here. Monica says, do you think I should take another gap year if I cannot hit a 500 on the AMC full length? So Monica, if you are not hitting 500, I would definitely say it's probably reasonable to take a gap year. You want to use that gap in a way that is really, 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 really productive, though. And so I'll give you kind of the cliff notes. If you need more help, please do drop me a line at mcatboss.com. I very much specialize in helping people who are retakers or people who are having trouble kind of hitting a score plateau, figure out why they are hitting a score plateau and break through that. But my recommendation would be that you need to work more on your content, but not in passive content mode. You probably need to work more on working on question banks before you start taking practice exams again. And then whenever you do take practice exams, you need to be breaking them down one problem at a time for like 2 to 3 days after you take them to figure out how to improve. For more specific information, please do feel free to reach out at mcatboss.com. Don says, doctor told my son to study for 2 weeks after junior college and take the MCAT. Was upset, but he ended up doing well, had 18 MD interviews and is now an MS2. Very good, very good. That is awesome, Don. Props to your son. If being able to ace it after a couple weeks, I would say probably, if I had to ballpark it, probably in the neighborhood of like 5 to 10% of students are able to go in, and the students who tend to do really well on the MCAT after just a couple of weeks tend to be the students who are, let's say, very like question focused. So I was a student who was, I graduated with a degree that a lot of people kind of categorize as difficult, like a math and physics degree, and graduate with honors. And for me, the fact that I enjoy reading meant that the CAR section was the verbal reasoning section, the reading comprehension section was very, very easy. And I was able to get through and make, hundreds of percentile in that section. But for me, the fact that all of the sections, including the science sections, were passage based ended up being a huge distraction, because I would read the passages and spend so much time on them that I was not getting the kind of points I needed on the questions. And I had to kind of reorient myself towards doing questions more than focusing on the passages in order to pull off my 98th percentile overall score. A lot of people don't find that a natural transition. And so it takes a lot of really sort of focused, concentrated, just really focused energy in figuring out how to be thorough with the questions, but not feel like you have to be thorough with the passages. Because for people who really enjoy reading and who think that all the details matter in the passages, the passages unfortunately tend to be a little bit more of a distraction than a help on the MCAT. And so because those questions are not very direct, it's very hard to do. he was reading in the ninth grade at first grade. That's awesome. That is super awesome. Welcome in, Dr. Shapiro. That is great. Very cool. Very cool. Well, props, major props on that, and props to him on getting through medical school. That is very, very cool. Very awesome. And you guys, when you see stories of people doing really well in the MCAT, after a couple of weeks of study, be aware that it is a conquerable exam, and be aware that everybody comes in really with their very different background, right? Very different background. I'm a reading specialist, fathering and father trainers. Yeah, that early emphasis on reading, I think, is probably the biggest payoff. If there are any sort of parents of future doctors on the live today, I really would emphasize that what Don is mentioning here about a really early emphasis on reading being a huge benefit to sort of making the preparations for the MCAT a lot easier. It is a real phenomenon. So my own background, because I was a math major, the expectation is that the reading comprehension section would be harder, but because I've always been an obsessive reader who reads hundreds of pages a week, it was totally doable, right? So do get in there and study. So Alex says 3.82 GPA, junior year, studying for the MCAT. Am I in a good position? Okay, Alex, yes, and that is awesome. I see the stethoscope in the handle. I did not know you could do that. I need to borrow that. That's great. I need to add the little stethoscope. That is wonderful. But yes, 3.82 is totally fine. That is the exact GPA that I applied with, and worked out great. I got interview invitations at just about every med school that I applied to. On the YouTube side, Christmas says, "Are you a doctor or practitioner by chance?" So I am a doctor. I am an MD. We don't take medical questions on the live if that's related to your inquiry there. This is focused. Today's live is focused on medical school admissions and getting ready for the MCAT. The next one says, "The doctor upset me. They need to study." Yeah, I think sometimes the doctors who took their entrance exams 30, 40 years ago they're dealing with a very different landscape, right? The number of people who are taking the MCAT now is really, really high, right? There's in the application year, I want to say there's over 40, 50, 60,000 people taking the MCAT. And so it's just really different landscape. Jay says, "I took full length 6, dropped 4 points to 512. I have my test next week, feeling worried." So general encouragement, don't let a little bit of a fluctuation between exams freak you out. If it's just a one-off, if there is substantial fluctuation, like scoring a 503 on one exam, scoring a 515 on another, usually there's something else going on. I've heard everything. Just for those of you guys who are new here, my name is Dr. Matt. I've been teaching the MCAT for 13 plus years. If you have really big variations between your exams, it usually means one of two things. Either it can be that you are taking some of the exams that you have already seen. That is one that I've heard. I've had students tell me, I don't understand why I scored a 520 on one and a 502 on the other, and then come to find out that they had taken the 520 exam before and they thought it would still be diagnostic if they took it again, and didn't realize that they actually remembered the previous practice exam. So definitely make sure you're not retaking it. On the flip side, for students who are taking real full-length practice exams with real testing conditions and timing, then you're usually dealing with something more serious. And the serious part there is that you're going to potentially be finding out that you have some either time traps or that you have actual content gaps. The time traps phenomenon happens when a student runs into a passage that they feel very frustrated by, and they let it get the best of them. They lose track of the time, and instead of spending like 8 or 9 minutes on a passage and its associated questions, they spend like 15 or 20 minutes, and they won't let it go. And they're like, I'm so close to answering these right. And because they then realize that their time really flew by, they then are in a panic for their next 2 or 3 passages, and they kind of guess their way through, and it ends up creating this ripple effect where an entire section can drop 4 or 5 points just because of these time traps. So beware of time traps. Put yourself a limit and avoid those runaway time traps. Now, from the sort of other side is the content gaps, and this is a real thing. Some students know one particular sort of batch of content really, really well. They can do 150 problems in a row from a question bank in one topic area, get 145 of them right. And then the very next topic category, like, in physics, for example, they'll be really confident in mechanics, but then on the electronics side, they're really, 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 really patchy, and they basically guess their way through the entire thing and crash out if that is a big part of a full-length exam that they take. So beware. Other things, of course, that can affect it include your sleepiness. If you are feeling not awake enough, that can always happen. So beware. All of those things are really reasonable reasons why that can happen. The most serious one tends to be the content gaps, because if a student has content gaps, that is something that they actually need to fix. In fact, while we are on this topic, let's do a real quick clip here so I can post this one later, and we'll kind of cover specifically that. So I get asked all the time, why is there such a big swing in my scores between different practice full-length MCAT exams? And here's the thing. It can happen because of a few different reasons. 1, you might be tired, but there's more serious reasons. 2, you might have problems with actual time runaway passages where the time sink happens. You don't want to give up on a passage. So instead of spending 8 or 9 minutes on it, you spend 20 minutes on it, and then you're lost for the rest of the test. That's a real thing. You got to put a hard stop to passage at around that 8 or 9 minute mark, or 10 minutes at the worst, and you got to move on. The third one is the most serious one. If you consistently jump up and down, like 6 to 8 points between exams, make sure that you are either not retaking previous practice exams, or that you have not identified actual serious content gaps. Because if you hate one area of content and you just never studied it, that huge drop that you experience when that is a dominant topic in a particular full-length practice MCAT can be the reason why your score drops out really badly. And if that happens, you got to fix that content gap before you get in to the real test, because if that is the main topic area for a section on your test, that can tank your score. So figure that out and fix it before the real test day. All right. Okay. We go ahead and probably wrap up here in around 2 minutes. So if you guys have any other questions in the last couple of minutes, go ahead and drop them here. Also, be sure to drop a message or check out the new options on MCATboss.com. Do keep in mind also that I do cash pay about $100 per student for referrals who book a multi-hour package. So if you have anybody in your life who's a pre-med, or if you have a son or daughter who's a pre-med, tell them to head over to MCATboss.com. And the answer is yes, you can. You can refer your own sibling or child or anybody in the family or friends to MCATboss.com. Just make sure that they mention who you are and what your email address is if you do refer somebody, so that we can make sure that you get your referral. Thank you, $100 if you refer somebody who books and does their first session. With that said, if everybody's questions are answered, we will wrap up here in about 30 seconds. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to see if there's any other questions, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And I do believe we're at the bottom of the questions on YouTube, so we'll say goodbye to YouTube